So today we're going to have a look at the encouraging behaviors from the authentic conversation model. And what we're going to focus on are the typical words, voice, and body that we'd recommend you experiment and practice with when you're listening, exploring, disclosing, and aligning. And I'll also say a few words just about our recommendations on what you do between now and your practice session on the encouraging behaviors. So you'll remember the authentic conversation model, and I guess the key things to remember, the vertical axis was all about giving attention to others, and the horizontal was giving a focus of attention to yourself. And we had a number of behaviors that sit behind the directing and encouraging energies and styles. So you'll remember in directing, we talked about push energy because when you're directing, that is what you're doing. You legitimately are pushing, letting people know what it is that you want, need, or expect. And you're focused on, if it was me, I'd be focused on my agenda, what I'm actually wanting to direct you towards. And we have four behaviors: proposing, calling out, probing, and requesting. And those ones are being covered in a separate video. So the encouraging behaviors are using what we call pull energy. The arrow is coming towards me. I'm drawing out other people's thoughts, views, their world. So it's all about from you to me, and it's focused on the other person, your agenda. And our four behaviors for the encouraging style are listening, exploring, disclosing, and aligning. Now, remember, we also had a tactical move that we call adjourning that you can use if the situation and the conversation you're in is moving to a more difficult kind of situation and things are maybe not quite working as you like. It could be that it's gone very flat and there's no real energy, or it might be because it's getting quite tense. And there's three things you can do there. You can postpone, you can pause, and you could review. And then we finally had the kind of fight flight responses. These are the ones based on when we get ourselves defensive, usually because we're fearful of something. And avoiding is your typical flight kind of response. You might see people putting themselves down, being quite quiet, not saying very much. It doesn't mean if you have a quiet voice or you don't say much that you are avoiding. But what we do know is when people are avoiding, that is often the kind of behavior you might see. Same is true with the discouraging, which is much more the fight kind of response. And the opposite, of course, happens there. You tend to see people putting other people down. They often can get quite loud and often say a lot and take over the conversation. So obviously you're wanting to just spot if that happens and notice your own, I suppose, defensive strategies. That's a useful thing to become aware of. But what we're going to concentrate in this short video is these four encouraging behaviors. So let's dive in, have a look. So the first one is listening. And listening, the key in listening is to show that you're listening. So being quiet and silent is one part of it, because obviously you have to allow others to talk. But if you just remain silent, we wouldn't really know if you are really listening and you have heard what somebody said. So the key for us in listening is to show that you've listened. And you do that in the following way. So the first thing is you need to show your listening by giving your full attention. And you do that with both your mind and body. Now, the body one is probably pretty obvious. You need to give people eye contact, turn towards them, look at them, all that good stuff. You do need to watch out for your devices or things like that. I've seen many people say, I am listening to you as you're, responding to messages on your phone. If you're doing that, you're actually not listening because you're not giving your full attention to the other person. So do give full attention with your body. And then with your mind, that's a little more subtle. We have got an amazing capacity and ability as human beings to look at people and actually be somewhere completely different. And you'll know this if you've ever had conversations with somebody where you know they're actually off in another world. You could probably wave at them and they wouldn't know that you're doing it because their brain and their mind is off somewhere else. So we need to make sure that our mind is focused on what somebody else is saying as well. And if we do those two things, then you're going to be in a good position to be able to paraphrase. And when we say paraphrase, we're meaning just let the person know what you've heard them say. It is almost like a recording and you're sending it back. So try not to introduce too many of your words. Just stay with what they have said. A phrase like, so what you're saying is, and then let them know what you've heard. I would recommend that you use a question at the end. Is that right? Or have I got that right? What that allows the other person to do is answer you and say, yeah, that is what I've said. But quite often you'll find that people, when they've heard you summarize and paraphrase what they've said, they will give you an extra little bit and they'll just tweak it a little bit because they might have another angle that they really want you to hear. So it can be very helpful for them to do that. So that's the first bit, is paraphrasing. And the second, this is quite a useful thing to do if you notice that somebody looks or sounds like they have some feelings going on. Now, if they said that they were feeling excited, or maybe they were feeling a bit worried or concerned about something, if they said those words, then of course you can paraphrase that back using the paraphrasing. What we're talking about here is if somebody's talking, they haven't said that they're worried, but they look it or they sound it, and you're picking up that from the way that they're talking, then it can be a really useful thing to do, just to send back and go, well, you sound or you look concerned, worried, excited, whatever it might be. Don't be on the hunt for feelings. You don't have to go searching for them. It's only if it shows itself in how the other person is speaking. Next, having done some good paraphrasing and testing feelings, if they're there, is to do a good summary. Summarizing can be really useful. It can help particularly people who talk a lot, because if you capture the one or two key things that you've been hearing and test that and make sure you're checking whether that is accurate, it helps them as well because it brings some clarity to their thoughts. So phrases like, so overall, the key points that you want to raise are this, or sounds like the main thing you're wanting to let me know is this. Have I got that right? So it's a really nice way to kind of bring what they're saying, what they're talking about to a conclusion. Now, a couple of things to watch out for. When you're listening, you're actually neither agreeing or disagreeing. You're not doing either of those. It's a neutral behavior. All you're doing is you're acknowledging and letting the other person know what you've heard them say. And if you keep it neutral, it's a really useful behavior, particularly if things are getting a little more tense, because it just eases the neutrality that you bring helps the other person feel heard. And just be careful you don't get into problem solving. Really good listeners, listening certainly is a key part of problem solving. But what we really want to do is just stay away from trying to sort out somebody. Just stick with what you're hearing them say and let them know and move things on from there. Now, in terms of your voice and body, the voice is really, as a general rule, I guess, warm, encouraging. I think the real spirit would be match the energy of the speaker. If someone is talking with a lot of energy and speaks quite quickly, I would probably up my energy a bit, certainly to match it for a while. I might ease it down a little bit after that. But if somebody's speaking quite slowly, maybe they're quite concerned, I might bring my energy down as well and just match them a little bit more. And with the body, good eye contact, of course, is really important. Without staring, don't be diving right into people, but just give them good eye contact, give them a bit of a break as well, look away, but you're making sure you're giving your attention. And the gestures tend to be more open, so palms are more up and open like that, whereas the directing ones are much more up and down. And mirroring, the only thing I would say with mirroring is if you see two people speaking and they really are in sync, they often do mirror each other. But they're doing that because they are really listening to each other. They're not actually copying their body language. So mirroring, all I'd say is if somebody's sitting, I would sit. If they're standing, yes, I would probably stand. But then just get into real contact through your eye contact and through your good quality of attention and paraphrasing. And that's it. That's what we have for listening. So exploring is a really nice, encouraging behavior. It often is connected with listening, but it is different because what we're doing when we're exploring is we're asking questions to deepen our understanding of what matters to the other person. So there's a lovely TED video by this man, Michael Bungay Stanier. I think it's a really nice video, I'll be honest. And he talks about watching out for your advice monster. And the advice monster is when we get ourselves sucked into giving advice in the spirit of wanting to help somebody. Now, it can happen when we are listening and asking questions. And what you need to be careful of is if you are asking questions, if you're using questions like, have you considered, don't you think, would you be interested in, how about if you can probably tell all of those are not actually questions at all. They are hidden ways of giving the other person your advice, and they are a directing behavior. Now, there's nothing wrong with giving advice, by the way. It might be exactly what somebody does need and want, in which case, please do go ahead and offer your advice. But I think what's important here is if you have the intention of exploring and helping to understand and deepen your understanding of the other person, then these questions are not doing that because you are now starting to give your advice in the form of a question. So just watch out for that. The kind of questions you want to be aiming for. There are some questions you can do yes and no, sort of closed questions. They tend not to, allow you to explore that much the other person's thoughts and ideas. So I'd probably steer away from them as much as you can. Move into who, when, where, how, what, why are much better, more open questions that you can ask. Just watch out for the why question. You'll see when you have a listen to the directing video, the probing questions tend to use why much more because why is more focused. It's a bit more on the questioner's agenda rather than on the other person, on the speaker's agenda. So here's a couple of examples or an example in asking a more exploring question. So note the difference between did you have a good call with Mary or John as a client versus asking, what did you learn about Mary or John when you spoke to them? So did you have a good call may just result in, yeah, it was a really good call. Yeah. Whereas what did you learn about Mary or John when you spoke to them? It's going to draw out a lot more response from the speaker. So see if you can ask much more of these how, what, why, when, where types of questions. So our third behavior is disclosing. Now, disclosing is a key behavior for building trust, and it works well when you do it one step at a time. If you've ever sat on a plane and had someone start to open up, and you've got a long journey to go, and they start telling you everything about what's going on for them, I could imagine you, like me, I'd probably want to be putting my headphones on and sort of going, okay, I need to move away. This is going to be taking ages. So I say one step at a time because big sort of disclosures of a lot of information can cause people to move away rather than move towards. What disclosing is, it's offering some information. Often the information moves from more tasky kind of conversations to feelings, or maybe from safe to more risky, personally risky, or more impersonal to personal. And what you're really doing is you are kind of taking the mask, the safety mask off ourselves, and we're sharing a lot more of our genuine selves. We're being a bit more vulnerable, really. And of course, in doing so, we invite others to also be vulnerable. And that's where you start to see trust arising as both of you start to share a little more. And that might take time, and not just in one conversation, but over a number of conversations. And just think of the people that you know and trust and are good, close friends that you have, even work colleagues that you trust a lot more. It's probably because you and they have been open about a number of things and been vulnerable with each other. So here's a few examples. Note that the importance is about being relevant and focused on being helpful to the other person. So it might be that you've got some helpful information. John's an expert in that area. He might be able to help you. That would be a nice, simple bit of disclosing to let somebody know you've got some thoughts that John might be able to help. From an empathy perspective, can be very useful to let others know similar situations that you've been in. Just be careful that you don't take over the conversation if you do that. But it can be a very supportive thing to say, so the other person isn't alone if they are challenged by a particular situation. Being honest, I think this is a really important one. It helps build trust and can be useful in more difficult or more challenging conversations. Letting somebody know, I'm not sure about you, but I'm struggling with this. I'm not quite sure exactly where or what to do next. Conflict, this is a key one, I think, if you've got a difficult relationship. If you are willing to almost put the olive branch out and say something like, I think I might have been a bit too pushy, or whatever your comment was, or I think I could have put that better. That can be a wonderful way to ease and bring you back together a bit more and encourage the other person to be open as well. From a leadership perspective, a simple bit of letting people know what your thinking is. My thinking behind this is that can be really useful to let people know. And asking for help, of course, would be a key piece. So I'm not sure where to take this next. Could you help me? So those are some ideas on the disclosing behavior, and the voice and body for them. I would say that actually the words are probably the key thing that make the biggest difference. And so long as you are genuine in your words, I think the disclosing is likely to have a positive impact. It's usually coupled with warm, sincere voice, of course. Open gestures can really help, but I don't think I would overplay those because we really just want the words to be genuine words. And I think that will result in a very positive open kind of impact. All right, so the last behavior is aligning. And this, I would tend to use aligning having done quite a bit of other, listening and exploring, because what starts to happen is you'll start to notice areas of agreement. And it can be a really useful thing to consciously point out, not only look for, but then name areas of agreement. This is a particularly useful behavior in more challenging conversations because it builds the relationship and it allows you to see points of agreement in order to separate where there might be disagreement rather than just only focusing on disagreements. So it can really be useful in helping to shift tension when the conversation maybe has got stuck. That can be useful to go, should we just have a look at where we've got to and what we're agreed on, and where are the areas that we're, finding differences of opinion. So that can really help you to get unstuck. And it can be really useful in building buy-in for new ideas, because the minute you name what you have in common almost, it builds your ideas together. So it's a very useful one, particularly in teams or project groups. Typical words, these are just some examples, but it might simply be, I agree the timing is critical. So letting somebody know you're on the same page with them on their view. We both want success for the team and the project. It's very clear. We are both agreed. We do want success for this team and for the project, and it's worth acknowledging that. Framing ideas of mutual benefit might sound something like, Well, here's an option that would work well for both of us. Now, of course, that does need to be based on a truth about that. You can't just say that without having done any exploring and understanding. And that's why the listening and exploring and the disclosing along the way will be useful to do first. And aligning usually comes on the back of all of that. And that final one, it looks like we're agreed that would be a very common phrase that I might use, having done some good listening and understanding and exploring. So the voice for this is again very similar to the other encouraging behaviors, warm, encouraging, a collaborative tone. You need to watch your tone and be careful that you're not trying to push agreement through. Sometimes people can dip into that. They use a stating agreement a bit too early, and it can feel like you're actually trying to manipulate and move things too quickly. And that can come through in the tone. So keep your tone collaborative. It's a warm, encouraging kind of tone. And the body is usually pretty relaxed. Again, matching energy levels as we've seen, particularly in listening, maintaining eye contact to make sure that you're conveying connection. So there you have the 4 behaviors. That's the summary. It's quite a nice, you might want to either take a note or a photo of that. It's quite a handy one to have for all of the encouraging behaviors, with some hints and tips on when you might use each of them and some of the typical word stems for each and the voice and body. So that's it. What we'd recommend that you do between now and your practice session for the encouraging behaviors. We've said this before, don't change at this stage. We really want to encourage you to observe and notice what you and others are doing. What do you say? What don't you say? What do others do or not do when they are in this encouraging kind of set of behaviors? So be curious, and you've got your workbook, the awareness effect. So have a read through that, particularly for the encouraging behaviors. And that's it. We look forward to seeing you in the practice session, and we're going to have a go at all of these. Of course, this is all very well to understand it. The key will be is in having a practice, experimenting and getting some good feedback. So we'll look forward to doing that with you all. Thank you very much.